You know, this gives me a great opportunity to ask Sean some questions.
All right.
Is that fair? No.
She wants to be a star.
Yes, yes. Saying hello to this. And this is a jealousy. I mean, this dog gets so upset when this cat gets pet that I have to save the cat. Well, I understand you were at a lecture and you happened to hear MacDonald over there in Claremont Divinity School.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I was glad to be able to go to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What have you been thinking since you had the good fortune to hear the gentleman?
Well, I've been wondering about the role of understanding in scholarship.
In
scholarship.
That's a very strange question, but go ahead. Good question.
Because while the scholars are good at accumulating more and more data and making some insightful connections, the bigger question is, what do you do with all of that information? How do you make it meaningful?
See, you have defined the problem with scholarship.
I'm glad to hear that.
It is not the role of scholarship to push the implications of their scholarship for society as a whole, and especially for implications for political, religious, and philosophical matters. Really, it's to separate it. It's just to report with all of their skill what can be said from their studies based upon certain texts. He came out with an astonishing position. He's advanced, for the first time that I know of, a new hypothesis to understand the entire New Testament tradition, called, I think we have a right to call it, the MacDonald hypothesis.
Okay.
Which is that if you can read carefully, according to the rules of scholarship, you can conclude in the same way that he has that the Gospel of Mark can be shown to have been directly influenced by Q. And Q is that material that was common, but not in Mark, that's common between Matthew and Luke, not in John, which is given a date before any of the early Gospels, somewhere between 50 and 67, and those dates include 3 stages of the Q material. Basically, Q is called the sayings of Jesus.
Right.
So he is saying the whole New Testament can be understood if you just understand Q, the sayings of Jesus, and you can see the Gospels, the differences between them are now readily apparent. Each one of the 4 Gospels had their own authors, had their own particular theology, which they wanted to push, and therefore they took the sayings of Jesus and they added to it their own particular theology, and that became the 4 Gospels. And since Paul ignored all of Q and the theology of the Synoptic Gospels, it's independent of Paul as well. So what? Right, so this gentleman came up with a brilliant theory that you can understand the entire New Testament, especially Synoptic Gospels, by reading just the sayings of Jesus, and then you can look at the 4 other Gospels and you can see their differences can be accounted for in terms of theological differences, but you can't find those theological principles in the sayings of Jesus. Uh-oh.
Well, there's a gap there. I guess it's the job of scholarship to explore, but not necessarily to push the implications of what that might mean.
Well, what do you think the implications might be politically? Would you not agree there's a evangelical Christian movement in this country that is allied with Judaism and Israel, that is purporting and supporting certain political military agendas?
Right.
Suppose they were to read with care and go over the MacDonald hypothesis and discover that they just have one theological understanding, but it does not express the essence of Jesus. If you are willing to say that the essence of Jesus can be found and explored in terms of the sayings of Jesus, which, by the way, ought to be a good way to judge it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they can't find, if they can't find their theology in the sayings of Jesus, they're just off on a toot, aren't they?
Yeah, they're just Paulines.